Hey there, Professor Wiseguy here with another 5-minute fix. You may remember me from such 5-minute fixes as our friend the quotation mark. And this is a follow-up to that previous video. This time we need to look at some often tricky issues that come with quotation marks and their surrounding punctuation. Now let's imagine that you're quoting something from that wonderful book, Be Your Own Doctor. On page 115, the author says, "We have had some success treating Lyme disease using papaya tea." So here's the question. Does the period for that sentence go inside or outside the closing quotation mark? Should it be A or B? The answer is B. Periods and commas always go inside closing quotation marks. I will say that this is American usage. You'll sometimes find different behavior in British publications, but really, what do they know? On the other hand, you might have a semicolon or a colon that comes at the end of a quoted bit. What if we go on with a semicolon? Which of these is correct? Is it A, with the semicolon inside the quotation mark, or B, with the semicolon outside the quotation mark? Answer: semicolons and colons always go outside or after the closing quotation mark. Granted, this one doesn't come up all that often. The next question, though, is much more common. What do we do with question marks or exclamation marks? To answer that, we have to ask ourselves, who is asking a question or getting excited in this case? If that's not clear, perhaps a couple of examples will help. Did you learn how to cure dengue fever in Be Your Own Doctor? Question mark. Where does that question mark go? Did the author, Rachel Weaver, ask the question? No, I did. Therefore, the question mark should go outside. But what about this? Rachel Weaver said, "Would you like to be able to treat toenail fungus with tree moss?" Question mark. In this case, since Weaver is asking the question, and by the way, I made that bit up, the question mark would go inside. Let's try this with exclamation marks. I was excited to get to the chapter titled Castor Oil! Exclamation mark. You can probably figure out here that since I, the writer, am the one who's excited, the exclamation mark goes outside the quotation mark. On the other hand, if Rachel Weaver was so excited to present that chapter that she called it Castor Oil, then we'd need to keep the exclamation mark inside. Imagine, if you will, that you are heading to class and you see a classmate walking away from the room. The classmate says, "Professor Wiseguy told me no class today." Doesn't that deserve an exclamation mark? Let's consider the possibilities. If the prof was thrilled but the classmate wasn't, it might look like this. "Professor Wiseguy told me no class today!" with the exclamation point inside. Because it was the prof who was excited, and that's how we do it. On the other hand, if your classmate was excited but the prof was not, then it would be, "Professor Wiseguy told me no class today." I don't know. The exclamation point in this case would go after the quotation mark and it would replace the period. Now, what about this one? Did Rachel Weaver ask, "Have you ever cured a headache with a pine cone?" In this case, we have a question about a question. Both the quoted stuff and my stuff is asking a question. So would we do this? Did Rachel Weaver ask, "Have you ever cured a headache with a pine cone?" Question mark, question mark? That would look really weird, and we don't do that. Instead, we just use the first one, and that's the one out inside the quotation mark, and let it stand in for both questions. One last thing about quotation marks. If you, like in that no class today example, have a quotation within a quotation, no matter why the quotation marks are used, then the enclosing quotation, the first one that starts the whole thing, gets regular double quotation marks, while the enclosed quotation, the one on the inside, gets single quotation marks, which looks suspiciously like apostrophes. You might recall that's what we did here. Professor Wiseguy told me no class today. And what if you have a quotation within a quotation within a quotation? Well, technically, you'd just keep alternating between single and double quotation marks, but it would be better, if possible, to rewrite the sentence and avoid this whole mess. So what's our takeaway on this quotation mark extravaganza? 1, periods and commas always go inside closing quotation marks. 2, colons or semicolons or dashes always go outside the closing quotation marks. 3, question or exclamation marks can go inside or outside, depending on who is asking the question or getting excited. And 4, a quotation within a quotation is marked with single quotation marks instead of double ones. Follow these rules and you'll never be misquoted again. Now, like this thing, subscribe, ring that bell. You can quote me on that.